Hello, my name is Vanessa Salazar, and I'm going to read an excerpt from my book, Selima and the Merfolk. The next day, Dave was the first to rise. He checked on Selima twice before waking her at 8 o'clock. Her symptoms were the same as they were the day before, so he insisted that she accept Mrs. Joseph's offer. Annie ironed a romper and laid it on Selima's bed. Just because you're sick doesn't mean you can't look nice, she said. Thanks, Annie, you didn't have to. It's nothing, said Annie. Selima dressed and held her hair back with the comb Drea gave her. Her legs struggled to carry her weight. Not once did she complain. Dave was dressed and ready to take her, despite her discomfort. Selima still wanted to engage in mermaid talks with Mrs. Joseph, so she asked her father to let her go alone. He fought her a bit, but eventually gave in. He watched her walk down their driveway and out until she passed Clearwater Road. The morning air was rich with the sound of waves and seagulls. Mrs. Joseph seemed to enjoy the melody as much as Selima did. She gave Selima a soda bottle with a mixture of honey, distilled seawater, and lime juice. She swore it could cure anything in 2 days. Hopeful that the old lady was not finished, Selima lingered. I know why you got sick, Mrs. Joseph said. It's that comb. My comb, Selima questioned. She did not expect Mrs. Joseph's revelation. It belonged to a mermaid. Did you find it, or did she give it to you? You're not serious. Selima forced snicker irritated her sore throat. Don't insult me, child. What I have forgotten, you could only hope to know. Did she give it to you, or did you find it? It made no sense to lie to a woman who obviously knew what she was talking about. Selima confessed. You must give it back or throw it into the sea. It's that comb that made you sick, Mrs. Joseph repeated. A comb that caused sickness did not seem logical to a young girl like Selima. Mrs. Joseph pointed out that hers were not normal circumstances. With strong suspicions that Drea's intention was to kill Selima, Mrs. Joseph was very candid. She suspected that the mermaid was jealous or harbored ill feelings towards Selima. Her secret was out, so Selima told Miss Joseph everything, including about Ambrose and that he loved her. To her knowledge, Ambrose hadn't told Drea anything about them, and she was almost sure that Drea hadn't seen him touch her face. From the encounter she had with Drea, the mermaid had portrayed a sensitive but confident persona. If she had witnessed anything upsetting, Selima expected that she would have confronted them. Mrs. Joseph said that Drea would have sensed the change in Ambrose, and it did not matter how Selima felt about it. Drea needed to be exclusively desired. You know all of that from your research? Selima asked. I took my work seriously. I researched everything. Mrs. Joseph added that Drea was too young to know how to blight a comb. The comb was meant to keep Selima sick enough that she would not be able to visit the river. Unable to ignore such strong accusations, Selima pulled the comb from her hair. Yet she struggled to believe that it was meant for her harm. The analysis of the comb was as strange as the feelings between Ambrose and Selima. Mrs. Joseph ordered Selima to stay away from the ferry. Throw the comb away, she demanded. Don't take it back to your house. That is a big accusation you're making, Selima said. You don't even know Drea. I know Merfolk. I can't believe what you are telling me. Though confused, Selima was relieved to share her experience. Luckily for her, Mrs. Joseph was not just anyone. She understood when Selima confessed her mutual love for Ambrose. As much as she sympathized with the unusual situation, Mrs. Joseph still could not give her blessing to their union. She warned Selima that Drea would kill her if she had an opportunity, and if Ambrose truly loved her, he would not let her go easily. Selima had fallen in love from the moment she met Ambrose. She was unsure if what she felt was fascination until he lifted her off the rock when he taught her to swim. In her distress, like a young fool, she was determined to see him one more time. Mrs. Joseph warned her not to go to the ferry. Selima was honest and did not hide her intention. Her connection to Ambrose was strong, and she could not let herself hate Drea. You are connected to them. That's why the water subsides for you, Mrs. Joseph said. Salima's eyes opened wider. Miss Joseph was like a professor of Norfolk study. Yes, I know that too, Mrs. Joseph said. Aches and pains became a minor issue. Salima gulped some of Mrs. Joseph's tangy remedy before she walked to the ferry. Ambrose was in the river alone. His jaw dropped when she told him all that Mrs. Joseph had said. I can't believe Drea would do something so evil, he said. I don't want to consider that what the woman said could be true. I can't come back here. I just wanted you to know why, said Salima. Ambrose paused and laced his fingers with his. Salima, what would you say if I told you there was a way for us to be together? What do you mean? I love you, Salima. I know you don't believe in true love. You need to understand that love is a way of life in my world. I knew it the very first time I saw you, and I think Drea did too. I am a human. How could I be your true love? Remember I told you we have folklore about humans? Yes, but I don't believe that, Ambrose. It is true, Salima. Norfolk had tails in the water and legs on land. Something happened and the sea king cast a spell that took that ability away. We've loved humans before. In spite of the fact that Salima had been living half of her days in fantasy, the progression of events was more than she expected. If she was not afraid that Drea would appear, she would have asked all the questions she wanted. Salima promised Amman she would try to visit him the following day. It would have to be early, since Dave would not believe she wanted to see Anthony again, and she had no reason known to him to see Mrs. Joseph. She anticipated that she would be at the ferry by 5 o'clock and be home by 6. Ambrose accepted her offer. He promised to be there. Salima gave him the comb and watched him study the craftsmanship before he clasped it in his hands and crushed it to dust. As she left Ambrose, Salima tortured herself with scenarios of the violence the movement could unleash on her. She walked down the beach and spied Anthony, who always seemed to appear at the worst times. He had seen her come from behind a rock, and as always, he was not hesitant to question her. I was not behind the rock, Salima said. You were, I saw you. They both faced the rock to see that the tide had risen several feet and the sea was rough again. Anthony insisted it had been different a few minutes before. It should have been easy to convince him otherwise, with the sea being so contrary to his claim. He spoke in anger and insisted she tell him what his grandmother had told her. She's been telling those mermaid stories all my life. You shouldn't believe her, he said. She didn't tell me anything. I waded in some water, she said. Gosh, is that so unusual? You act like you saw me walking on water. Anthony turned from her and walked away. She followed him and tried to change the subject. She feared his anger would lead him to find answers elsewhere and throw suspicion on her. Her girly charms convinced him to sit with her on the sand to talk. She focused on the conversation on him. He played football for a club and attended university to study engineering. Salima relaxed, and for the first time she allowed herself to enjoy his company, even permitting him to walk her home. Dave was in the front yard trying to look busy. His confidence in Anthony safeguarded Salima from interrogation. Anthony stood next to her while her father touched her forehead with the back of his hand. He was satisfied that her fever had diminished. She showed him the drink Mrs. Joseph had given her. Dave did not have much confidence in homemade remedies, but he respected Mrs. Joseph's knowledge. Missy ran to her mistress. She circled Anthony and snapped at him a few times. Anthony didn't show her the fear she expected, so she ran to the back of the house and barked incessantly until Salima followed her. There Missy had retreated to a pink dog house with her name painted in black. Salima inspected Missy's new home. It was not made of bits and ends of material. It was crafted as beautifully as Annie's office. Salima ran to her father, and he closed his eyes and smiled as he returned his daughter's love and affection. You're welcome, he said. When did you do this? Selima asked. I've been working on it. Missy needs a home, right? Thanks, Dad. It's so cute. Annie joined them. She catered to Anthony like a mother, and she told stories of his birth and his parents. Anthony's company was little distraction from Selima's dilemma. She didn't understand what Amorous meant when he said that they could be together. What was clear to her was that as time went on, she felt more connected to him. Everything in her life until then was hard. Amorous was just another challenge. Before the sun set, Selima's symptoms were gone. Her medicine was half done, and she was much better. She walked alongside Anthony to the road and told him that she enjoyed the afternoon. That night, she was restless with worry. Soon, she had to make a decision to see Amorous or not. What if Amorous was wrong and his plan did not work? What if Drea found out? Hopeful of a solution and a good night's rest, it took quite a while before she fell asleep. That's it for the while. So thank you very much for the opportunity to read for you, and enjoy the rest of Campus Lit Week. Bye.